So this is the Whole Man Academy podcast. I am Anthony Asprey. My guest today is the wonderful Danny Crates. Danny is a TV presenter, speaker, event host, executive coach, which is the normal stuff, I would say. The cool stuff is he's a Paralympic icon, gold medal winner, and former world record holder. Danny's widely considered one of the greatest British disability athletes of all time, which is fantastic. Had a 12-year glittering career that saw Danny win every major title, including the World Championships, the European Championships, and the Paralympic World Cup. Danny, welcome to the Whole Man Academy.
How you doing? You're right. I didn't write that intro myself, just so everyone knows that, right?
Yes, you did. You said to me, if you don't do it, you'll get me in a headlock. But it's important, I think, to set the tone for this podcast because, you know, you're let's say, in some respects, a normal guy, but actually you've achieved some very amazing feats, I think, which we'll delve into. But firstly, we always ask the same questions, which is how are you and where are you?
I'm the same as everybody else. I'm at home. I'm sitting in the spare room in our house, which, like many people's spare rooms, if you can't see it, but to that side has got all the stuff that's just been rammed over there. My partner has claimed the dining room, which does become our office during the day. There's one child. I've got a 12-year-old working just over there doing all his schoolwork. I've got a 10-year-old just through in that room doing all his schoolwork, and I'm sitting here in lockdown like everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's a challenging time for all of us. It's an opportunity as well to just kind of live a slightly different life, isn't it? Because none of us generally would have, as you said, kids at home in rooms and partners working from home. And talking of that, one first question is, what was it like to have your hair cut by one of your kids?
I know, that's pretty scary when your children are standing behind you with the clippers. I must say, you know, in the world of social media, that was a bit of a photo thing. But my partner, Gemma, cut the hair, which I don't know actually what's more scary, whether you let your partner do it. Because as soon as you hear those clippers go on, you think, right, what have I done to upset her today?
Yeah. Because
this could go really bad for me. But she did all right, actually. She hasn't done a bad job. She didn't go too far with it. This weekend is going to be the real test, because this weekend her confidence is up and we're all having our proper haircuts.
It's a dangerous time for a lot of us with partners, with clippers and stuff like that. So I understand.
Has yours been done yet?
Well, I actually did mine myself. Emma was a bit too scared to do mine. And I mean, my hair's got very long on top, but I did the sides. And the important thing was that I'm staying straight on because I did it far too short on one side and not short enough on the other. So if I just stay straight whilst I'm doing anything to camera at the moment and nothing from the back. But that's one of the things I can't wait for the hairdressers to be open, because we all know, or for me, I feel a lot sharper when I've been to the hairdressers and they've, you know, tidied your hair up. That's one thing. Now, we met over a year ago at one of the events with David Key, who we both know, and that kind of got us both kind of connected and me learning more about your story. And if we could just jump into that quickly, obviously, you know, you were 21 when you had an accident and you lost your right arm. And could you just tell us? I don't expect you to have to go back all through it again, because I don't think that probably does you much good reliving what I guess was a traumatic experience. But could you just tell us quickly about kind of what it's like for you and what happened and where were you?
So I was in Australia doing what I like to call the Essex version of traveling Australia, which is Sydney to Cairns in as many pubs as you can do in a year. I actually was right at the end of my trip. There's another story to the end of my trip, but the short story is I was right at the end of it. I had about a week until I was due to go home. I was doing my last piece of work, which was driving from Brisbane to Cairns. I was working for a backpackers at the time, and I was just delivering leaflets and doing some promotional stuff, just, you know, linking them up with all the other backpackers up the coast. And we was going to, our finishing point was going to be Airlie Beach, which had been my home for 4 to 5 months, and probably the greatest time of my life in that period of my life. Was living in Airlie Beach, working for backpackers, scuba diving, just an amazing group of people at once happened to be in that same place, and we all met each other and we became very strong. And that was going to be my finish point. So I was going to get, some of them were still there, so I was going to get to see them, revisit the place I love, and then I was due to go back to Brisbane, straight to Sydney on a plane to go home. And I was about 60 kilometres from Airlie Beach in a place called Serena. And I still to this day do not know how or what happened. All I know is that suddenly there was a big rumble, and I came to, and I was in a ditch 15 metres down an embankment in a car that wasn't very well at the time. And I noticed that there was an arm on my lap. There was an arm laying on my lap, and I actually thought it was somebody else's. So I had the passenger in my car. I turned to him. I was in a bit of a panic. I was like, "There's an arm on my lap," and his words were, "Don't look now. It's yours."
Right.
And that set, and it was just that set into. I don't actually remember much of it. I remember that bit, but I don't vividly remember it as a picture. I just remember the words. But what I did do was I couldn't get out my side of the car, so because mine was the wrecked side. So he'd long gone. He was up the embankment, and I picked my arm up and then just carried it out the car. By the time I got out of the car, there was only one house on that road. Luckily, there was one house on that road. It's a typical Australian long straight road, and they heard it. And the lady had come out to see what happened, and she pretty much just rugby tackled me to the ground and sat on top of me because I was running around like a lunatic at the time and losing a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So she just sat me down or pinned me down, almost sat on top of me to keep me still, and just waited for the ambulance. And then the only thing I remember about that part of it was the fire crew came down first, and that they helped put me on the stretcher, and then they realised that there was fuel coming out of the car. Right. So they just wanted to get me out of there quick. So they strapped me to the stretcher and legged me up this embankment. It was quite steep, and but they took me up feet first. So I started sliding out the back of the stretcher. So I just remember these people trying to hold me on. And then from then it was in the ambulance and just asking for pain relief. Because then by that stage I realised it was really hurting. And then I got taken off to Serene Hospital, which was the local one, where they stabilised me. And then they transported me off to Mackay Base, which was the main hospital where the surgeons did the patch-up job. I don't remember much. I remember being in a room with people, and them almost asking for permission. They said, "Look, if we can't save the arm, can we have your permission to amputate?" I mean, if you're unconscious, they don't need it. But I was still around, vivid at that time, and it was just like, "Do whatever you need to do, just put me to sleep." So all I want to do is go to sleep.
Yeah, just get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
I mean, that, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, I guess it to state the obvious, it kind of started a new chapter in your life, but also sent you down a new path that I'm guessing perhaps you wouldn't have taken had that not have happened. And I was reading your bio, and you said, it was about now focusing on the future and regaining like your positive attitude and having determination, which, I mean, anybody that understands your story and listens to this podcast will understand you have in abundance. And I see that you said you were on the rugby field within 6 months of that.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, that was, I mean, I came back home. I had a stint of what I call rehab the Jack Daniels way, which was basically just going out with mates, enjoying life. And friends and family were what are so important in these situations. And we have a very close friends, we have a very close family, and we take them for granted sometimes. But they're the ones that really step up when you need them. So I still remember it being in hospital, and that was pre-mobile phone, when they used to wheel the old trolley out every time the phone rang. And as the news travelled around the world, pretty much, that an English backpacker had lost his arm in a car crash, and it soon became apparent it was a guy called Danny Crates. And my mates started to hear about this. People started phoning the hospital, and this nurse used to wheel this big phone on a trolley out to me, and she started getting frustrated with it because it was just non-stop backwards and forwards. But I still remember one of the first phone calls, and it was one of my very, very good friends. And I picked up the phone. So this is like 2 days after my accident. I'm still in intensive care. Yeah. Still wired up to all the machines. And I answered the phone, and he went, I always said you was a bloody crap driver. He used a different word to that, but
you can swear. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, his words were, I always knew you was a shit driver.
Yeah.
But that's what mates do, right? So I'm in intensive care, having just lost my arm, and my mate is just like, and you just laugh. And then, and that's the thing I realized, even in the darkest moments, you can always laugh. There's always, and even if someone only takes you out of that for a very split second, it's just that reminder that you're not there forever, right? So, and friends do that. And that was important, that first bit, but then rugby's been an important part of my life. And so my good friends at the rugby club, I went back there to just train. I didn't go back there to start playing. Yeah. I just wanted to be part of that environment again, and the nurturing environment that a rugby club has. And I'm still very good friends with some of those people that encouraged me back. And I just got on the park, started training, getting fit. Really started enjoying it. I was only 21, so I still had that testosterone that a 21-year-old has. So I wanted to go smashing into people and big tackles and get flattened myself. And then I just started after a few months of training. So we was coming up to sort of 11 months post accident now. I just started thinking, I want to play rugby again. I really want to play rugby again. I know I can't play to the level I used to play because my aspirations before the accident was to professional rugby. Yeah. And that wasn't going to happen, but I still could play rugby. And so we set the date, and the date was set. It was almost 1 year that I was going to play rugby again, and got out on the park and played competitive rugby, full contact.
How did that feel?
And have played ever since.
I'll tell you why it's great to listen to that. We talk sometimes on the podcast about gratitude and new appreciation for life. And I guess firstly you had a traumatic experience which could have gone much worse, and your life could have ended. So maybe you have had a new appreciation of life already. But I wonder whether when you went onto the rugby field and started playing again, I can only say I had a collapsed lung when I was a lot younger and had some really nasty operations, and they said I might not play football again, full stop. But I did, and I had a huge appreciation, a new appreciation for football to go on the field after that. And I just wonder with yourself, what was that like, that feeling of going back on the pitch, either for the first time or playing rugby properly?
I mean, I relate it to the biggest step on my road to recovery.
Wow.
Because it's the moment I realised that, these traumatic things happen to us in our lives, and everyone has trauma in their lives in one way or the other. We lose loved ones, we go through trauma ourselves, be it physical, be it, illness, be it mental traumas. We're all, nobody's going to get through life unscathed.
Yeah.
So, but the one thing I realized that it doesn't stop you from doing the things you love. It might change the way we do it. It might put it off for a while, and that was the moment I realized that I lost my arm, but I could still play rugby and I could still be part of the rugby squad. And I still played to a fairly decent level. Yeah. And that probably was for me, it was emotional, the game. The build up to the game was quite scary because I didn't really know which way it was going to go. Training is a very different environment to being out on the park. Yeah. But it's quite funny because the physio that looked after me, and he used to look after the rugby players, but he looks after the great and good of sport, a guy by the name of Kevin Lidlow, and he still does. I mean, half the England rugby team see him, football players, international athletes. He has everyone going for his doors, but he also was at the local rugby club helping them out at the time as well.
Right. And
he looked after me after my accident for a year. And I used to see him once or twice a week for a year. And it was always under the thing that he was strengthening up my arm. So that and sometimes he was so busy. Sometimes I'd be seeing him at like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it was only many years later that he confessed that the reason he was doing that was it was more about keeping an eye on me, because he knew I wasn't the kind of guy that was going to open up.
Yeah.
So he could keep an eye on me without me knowing I was being kept an eye on. So he would have an idea which way I was going to go. But he was there on the day, and he decided in his infinite wisdom the day of the first match, because he knew the opposition were going to be a little bit nervous as well, because we had TV cameras there.
Yeah.
Rugby Special, we had ITV News there, and then so he took me in the opposition dressing room just before the match, and he went, "Look, guys, you know what today's about. We're playing against. It's a big match as well. It's Thurrock versus Gravesend. So Gravesend's the opposite side of the River Thames to Thurrock, so it's always a big clash."
Yeah.
He said, "Look, we're against you. You've got Danny playing today." He said, "I just want to let you know that he is fit, strong, and able. So don't worry about tackling him, because if you don't tackle him, he's going to score a try.
Yeah.
So you might as well tackle him." And I just walked out of change room. I was thinking, like,
cheers for that.
Thank you for that, or not? Yeah. But it was. I mean, it was such an important part of my life, and the team, and they have been all the way through. And as I say, I'm still very good friends with some of them. We still go out with some of them to this day.
I think it's such an important. I mean, there's a couple of, I say, golden nuggets, learning points, whatever you want to call them in that story. And it's just important, as you said, to realise. I know there's sometimes a saying, how can you make your worst day your best day? And understanding that sometimes things happen. And as you said, we're not going to get through life unscathed. I know last night I was on a podcast with a guy in California who's just a couple of years older than me, but sadly his daughter actually got the flu when she was just a young teenager, and she passed away from the complications. And he said, I fell into the depths of despair for months and maybe a year. But he is thankfully, of the understanding that, you can decide what you do and what path you take, and you can either kind of, play the blame game and not create anything else in your life, or you can say, I'm going to get on with my life. And as you said, you experience great joy running back onto that rugby field. Now, talking of great joy, let's get into the Olympics, the Paralympics, and winning gold medals and setting world records, because that's something that I don't know, maybe a lot of guys listening to, or people listening to, would just think is beyond them. But as you said, in some respects, you're a normal guy. So at what point did you say, do you know what, I'm going to move from rugby into the athletics and the running? And was it always 800 meters? That's what you won your gold in, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that transition from rugby to athletics was, I mean, I'd floated the idea, and I was an athlete when I was younger, never really got to any great standards, but I used to be an athlete. And that was portrayed in some of the press from the rugby, that first rugby match. And there was a guy that used to look after the amputee section of British athletics. He had a squad, and some of them have been to Paralympic Games before. He'd seen that stuff, seen the footage of me playing rugby, could see that I still had an ability to move fast. And he contacted me, and he just said, look, it doesn't mean you're going to be a Paralympian. It's not like that. I mean, it's the British Paralympic team is one of the best in the world. You've got to be pretty high level just to make the team. But he said, we've got a squad, we train. Have you thought about giving athletics a go again? And my initial responses was like, no, I'm not really interested. Like, I love my rugby. Just let me concentrate on my rugby in a minute. And he'd contact me every now and again, just say, look, how you getting on? I say, look, this is the answer, right? In athletics, after a race, do you get to hang upside down from a barrier and drink Guinness through your ears like you do at rugby? And he was like, no, we don't do that. And I was like, I'm not interested then.
Forget it then.
Fun at rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was actually at a party with some rugby players again. Some of my very good rugby friends. It was John and Sally Keefe's house. I used to live around their house pretty much after my accident. Back in the days of the old booze run to France.
Yeah.
They used to do the booze run to France, and whenever they did the booze run to France, I was going to live around their house for about a week, and we'd have cheese and wine parties, and it was brilliant. So I was around there one day, and there was lots of good friends there, and the phone rang. It was my mobile, and it was this guy again. And my mate's wife, Sally, picked up the phone, and she went, "Oh, Dan, it's for you." And I'd had a few drinks at the time, and I went, "Whatever you do not answer that phone." So she just pressed the green button and went, "I'll just get him," and handed me the phone. And so I was like, "Oh, hi." And the guy's name's Peter Arnold. I was like, "Hi, Peter." And he was like, "I'll just see how you're getting on." Like, da, 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 da. And I was like, "Look, I'll tell you what, I'll do you a deal. I'll come to one of your squad weekends." And they used to do these weekends up in Sheffield. So I'll come to a squad weekend. I said, "If I don't like it, will you leave me alone?" And he went, "You've got a deal."
Yeah.
I went to this squad weekend, never looked back. Like, I met some athletes and realised for the first time, because the fear was that it was just like a disability, give it a go thing, which, has its place in life. I'm not saying, I'm not belittling any places that are for giving a go. But for me, I wanted to play sport. I just didn't understand. Yeah, and I didn't understand that disability sport would be like. I thought it'd just be a load of old disabled people,
Yeah.
And I went there, and there was athletes that had been to Atlanta. There was athletes, like one of the athletes was a 400 meter runner, and he come fourth in the 400 meters. Was broken by the fact he didn't win a medal. And I was just like, man, and these were fit, ripped guys, and girls. And Tanny Gray Thompson used to go to that squad as well. Used to work out with them sometimes, and I was just like, man. So my first initial thing wasn't about being just like the rugby. It wasn't about playing. It was about training. The athletics wasn't about winning medals. It was about, man, when I was an athlete, a young athlete, I used to watch Cram over there, and I had that dream, of putting on the GB vest. And I thought, I wonder if I can get a GB vest. I wonder if I can make an international team. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go, because what's the worst that's going to happen? In 6 to 8 months' time, I'm going to go, do you know what? It's not for me. And I'll go back to the sport I love, which is rugby. But I'll go back to rugby fitter, faster, stronger than I left it. So I'm going to win. And that's been my mindset to a lot of things in life. Give it a go. What's the worst that's going to happen? The worst that happens is you go back to what you're doing anyway with a greater knowledge. Yeah, I was going to go back to rugby with a greater fitness. So I just started athletics, and I gave it a go. And then the first international come up. That was the World Athletics Championships. I made it. I got through to the final. I came 8th. So I was 8th in the world. But to me, that's just last in the final. And then I started to think, and I've done this with the level of training I've done. if I commit a little bit more, and we've got 2 years to the Paralympic Games in Sydney, I wonder if I can make that Paralympic Games. And I made it, and I got through to the final. I came away with the bronze, and I was absolutely devastated. So if I'd run my perfect race that day in the 400, I would have won a medal.
Yeah. And isn't that funny? A lot of people would be like, wow, I won a bronze, but you're like, I can do better.
Yeah. I wanted the gold. And and at the time I was in shape to kind of do that. And the guy that won it, phenomenal athlete, Heath Francis from Australia, he'd been injured. So that's what opened up the door for me. I mean, he went on to set world records in the 4, the 2, amazing athlete. But he was injured. And at the time, I was in striking distance of the current world record. I was in striking distance of the gold. And I just stuffed up the race, really. And I came back devastated. But then I thought, right, now if I really focus on this, I want that gold medal.
Danny, just to ask you, just to cut in there quickly, but how did you stuff up the race? Like, for someone that doesn't understand, I have a rough, good understanding of sport and what have you, but for guys or people listening, what did you do? Because you were in peak physical fitness. Was it that you start, or you went off too fast, or what actually happened?
So mentally, we call it being in the zone in athletics. Mentally, I wasn't in the zone. I remember being on the start line and they introduce you. And that's where races are not won and lost in the race. They're won and lost in the build up to the race, when all the athletes are together for 40 minutes before the race. You imagine what goes on then in the call rooms and on the warm-up tracks and places like that. And we're actually put together for 40 minutes and we're not allowed anyone else with us. So it's a really stringent and it's stressful process you go. And I got out, and then they bring you out the track and they introduce you to the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And you got camera in front of your face like that when they go. And in lane 5, representing Great Britain, and the camera's there. And then you look up, and you're on jumbo screen. And I looked up and I thought, wow, them shorts are skimpy. And that's when you know, right? But that's when you know your mind is not in the right place. And then we had a false start. And I remember walking back thinking, right, refocus. And then, but the 400 meters is a really precise race, and it's not like any other race. There's no room it's not like any middle distance race. It's a sprint. So you have to do exactly your race. You can't do what anyone else is doing. And we are so precise that pretty much every 50 meters, we know exactly what time we've got to hit every 50 meters to be at our perfect race. And I just went off a bit too slow. You're talking quarter of a second, if that.
Fraction.
Too slow over the first 50, 100 meters. So when I hit the 200, I had to really start working to get back in the race. And it's just, when you do that, you tighten up. So it was about a quarter of a second's worth of mistakes that cost me the gold medal. And I mean, that is bonkers to think about. But in athletics, we're working in hundreds of seconds all the time. So it's so precise. But between Sydney and Athens, it became apparent from all my training that actually I had a bit more endurance in my body than I did pure speed. So we started looking at the 800 meters, and we had the same mindset with the 800. It's like, give it a go, start doing some more endurance-based training. This is my coach, me and my coach, Ao Falola, who sadly passed away a few years ago. But so me and my coach started doing some more endurance-based training. And what's the worst that'll happen, right? If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to the 400, but I'll be stronger.
Yeah.
So, and that's how we started. We started with the 8, and I did my first ever 800 meter race, and it just felt right. It was like, this is for me, because there's room for movement.
I guess, if people haven't done athletics, as you said, the 400 is, I guess, would you say I know you're not sprinting flat out for 400 meters, but you're maybe at 90% of your maximum pace.
Yeah, you're close. Yeah.
Whereas the 800, sometimes you see the races where, it might be a slow start, and then the last 200 is a flat out sprint. And as you said, is that when you realized you had a little bit more the endurance side, that you thought, did it felt better when you went into the 800?
It just felt right. I remember my first ever 800 meter race. It was a Watford Open. Anyone in athletics in the south of England will know the Watford Opens and the BMC races. They're famous. They're infamous. And I was in one of them. And I remember standing on the start line, and there was an athlete I knew. I think it was a Basildon athlete from another club near me. I looked at him. I went, how does this work then? What do you have to do? And he just went, right, what's going to happen, mate, is you're going to go through the first 400. And because you're a 400 meter runner, the speed we go through is going to be slower than you can run 400 meters. So you're going to be thinking, this is a doddle. Right, you're going to think this is easy. He said, you're going to go round the bend on the second lap. You're just thinking, I'm going to win this race. He said, you're going to get to 600 and then all hell's going to break loose. He said, the wheels are going to fall off. he said, you're just going to be treading water and you're going to wish you never started the 800 meters. And he was right for the first 4. He was right going around the bend. I was thinking, this is a doddle, man. Got to the 600, but I didn't get what he said was going to happen. I still felt okay. But the thing I loved about the 800 is the room for movement. So like you said, and some races are from the gun, flat out, eyeballs out. Some races go so slow, and then when that bell goes for the second lap, it's a sprint to the finish, and they're hard races. And I love all that. And there's a lot of argy-bargy and pushing and shoving and jostling for positions. A bit more rugby-esque for me. You know, you get to stick your elbows out and push people out of the way. And I just really engaged with it. And I found the training hard, because the endurance training for someone who's got the attention span of a walnut is you're going on the track and you're doing sort of 15 reps of 400 meters. Or we used to go on the track, we'd do like 4 times a mile. So you do 4 laps, which is a mile. You'd have 30 seconds rest where they took blood and did some analysis, and then you do another 4 laps. And for someone like me, that was arduous, and it took me a really long time to get used to that kind of training.
Does anybody enjoy that kind of? Because I appreciate it. It's like, you know, any professional sport. People don't see. I think people think that footballers have it easy as well, and they don't see the hard training, the hours and hours off the pitch. And for you, it's off the track. So, did you actually? I know you love sport anyway. So, did you enjoy most of the training? And obviously, that the endurance stuff is that much more taxing on your body.
I loved aspects of training. I mean, like many things in life, there's aspects we love, there's aspects we don't love, and the bits we don't love are the ones we've got to work on, because we're generally not as good at them. So the aspects of training I loved, because I'm still doing some 400 meter based training, because my 800 ability was based on the speed endurance it's called, that I had from the 400 meters. So I went into the 8 as like a faster runner, whereas other people come into the 8 with the strength of doing the 1500 to 5000. So you have 2 different kinds of athlete in there. You have your really endurance looking athlete who can run from forever, or you've got the more speed based, the power based athletes. And I was more power. So I love that training we used to do. It's called speed endurance training. And, you know, it'd leave you sick for a day. It was to the max. And a half hour, 40-minute actual running session, but you got all the build up to it first, all the warm down up. But the actual 40 minutes of pure eyeballs out training, I loved it. But then I had to do all the other stuff. And I was training. So I was training twice a day, 6 days a week, 11 months of the year, solid. That's the thing about athletics. You're training 99% of the time to race, like 1-2% of the time. But I loved it. And I loved that feeling of being that fit and just thinking what you could achieve. Like, you could go on the track and you could absolutely give it 100%. There's nothing left in the tank. You're on the floor. Sometimes you're being sick if you push too hard. And but then you can train again the next day, or even that afternoon, you're ready to go again. The
recovery, I guess, is that much faster. And I don't suppose many people that listen to this will ever really truly understand what it's like to either work out or, you know, train so hard that you feel like you're going to be sick, because most of us will have that, you know, safety mechanism that says, oh, I'm done now.
Well, we have that as well, and generally you're only going to be sick if you've messed it up. Same thing again, like you stuff it up. So and when you've got a squad of athletes doing a proper tough session, there's always one that's going to stuff it up. They're going to go off too hard, too fast, too early in the session. And everyone else knows what's going on with them, but they feel great. It's like, hey, I feel great. And everyone else at the back of the pack's going, we know what's coming. And it's the same in races. You watch the 800 meter race, the 400 meter race in an Olympics or Paralympics. There's always one athlete that goes off too quick, gets carried away with it, feels great. And there's something in their mind that's going, I know this is wrong, but I feel great. So I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it. And then it all goes wrong. And as long as it's not you in the training session, it's really funny when someone else gets it wrong, because they're in bits. So we generally only sick. It's not so much we push ourselves to those limits. Occasionally we do in certain sessions, but it's more about if we've got it slightly wrong, or, you know, we've eaten too close to training. But we do push ourselves to the max, which is why we get hurt, like, because our bodies are always at that limit, on that knife edge. Well,
let's talk about getting it right. And I know you said, you know, obviously you won the gold in the 800, and that's was it the Athens 2004?
Yeah, in Athens, yeah.
So, I mean, talk to me about, firstly, what it was like in the build up to that view, you know, in the hours that preceded the race, and actually in the race to win, you know, what is such an amazing achievement.
I mean, the build up to a race is tough, and like I said, that's where races are won and lost. I mean, I had the heats the day before, and I was first one on the track. So I think it was like 9:30 in the morning. My heat was, which is an early start for a track runner because you're up at 5 to start getting ready, to get food in, to start, doing your preparation, everything you need to do. Everything's orchestrated that we do. So we plan it. What time we're getting up, what time we're having breakfast, what time we're getting dressed, what time we're leaving the apartment, what time we're getting the bus, what time we're getting to the warm-up track, what time we're starting the warm-up. Everything's planned so we don't make mistakes. And then often you give other people those plans and they're checked off as you go through because it's just because of the nerves, right? And then I remember going out onto that track for the heats, and the heats is obviously is potentially the most nerve-wracking part if you're a potential medal winner, because if you go out in the heats, right, you've got no chance. And you can easily go out, you can get tripped, you can mess up the race, you can just, you can be a bit too overconfident, and then a couple of people hit the front and catch you off guard. So you've got to get through the heats to get in the finals. It's quite nerve-wracking. But I remember, so going out onto that track, had the whole build-up first, and you go out onto the track for your race, and there was about 30 of my friends and family in the track. No one else, just 30 of my friends and family in one corner, and the whole stadium was empty. And because they're proper Essex people, so they'd actually flown out that morning. They'd be drinking since they got on the plane at about 3 o'clock in the morning.
They're all very quiet.
They were nice and quiet, like flags everywhere, all Union Jacks on their faces. And I didn't even know some of them were going. So I couldn't look at them. And I got through that, but then I had the whole day to get through, and then the whole next day to get through, because my final was in the evening. So the day of your final, you're doing stuff like watching films, you go for massages, same thing, everything's orchestrated, you try and have a nap. You try not to think about the race too much, but it's coming, right? Because that night is going to define you. And then you start the actual proper build-up. So you'll start you check your kit again, because you've only checked it 8 times that day, right?
Yeah.
Check your numbers again, because you've only checked them 8 times that day. But then you've got like a process you go through, like, putting on your tracksuit. Every athlete's got their own regimes. Check your kit again. And then you gradually start making your way out. So you'll go out, you'll go to the bus station. There's special bus stations, right? You get on a bus, hoping that none of your competitors are on the same bus. Often they are, right? So you get on the bus and you've got one of your main rivals 3 seats in front of you. Then you go to the warm-up track, and there's all the other athletes around you, your fellow competitors, like your teammates that are going out to do battle. Some are coming back. Some have won, so they're bouncing off the walls. Some have got it wrong and they feel like the whole world's collapsed around them. That could be one of your best friends, right? And you've got them crying in the corner, but you're trying to concentrate on what you're going to do. And then eventually you get to the point where you start your process. You start your warm-up, which has been done so many times. Then 40 minutes before that, you go to the call room, which is where all the athletes are put together. They check your bags. You're not allowed phones, any music devices. You're not allowed, your coach isn't allowed in there. Then they walk you from the warm-up track to the main track, and you're under the belly of the track. You've got the noise above you. And then eventually they take you out onto the track for your race. So it's a massive build-up to the race and really nerve-wracking, and you get really tired. And you can't, once you're in that process, you can't go anywhere. You can't go to the toilet. Imagine when you imagine nervous, right? You got to go to the toilet a lot when you're nervous, right? Because you're in that fight mode. So you're going to get rid of everything.
It'd be a disaster for some of us guys with weak bladders.
Oh, well, I'm the same, right? So you're constantly putting your hand up like that. And then someone takes you to the toilet. I mean, sometimes you use it just to get out of that environment. So it's just like, just go to the loo, please. And all the athletes got their own little ways of looking confident. So, everyone's trying to, peacock it out and look like they're super confident, but inside you. And then they eventually walk you out on the track, and they let you do a couple strides on the track. And then they say, right, get stripped down, ready to race. And that's when, it's business. You get your tracksuit off, it all goes in the buckets, and then they carry the kit off, and then they start introducing you to the crowd. And that's the point when it really gets real, and you're just like, wow, man, the next 2 minutes of my life, this is it.
Yeah. And at that point, when there's that moment of silence when they allow you to kind of get crouching down. I know it's a difference between the 4 and the 8. Is the 4 you're in the blocks, whereas the 8 you're just kind of toe off the line, but right next to the line. What's it like in that moment for you when as you said, like it or not, for someone, it's such a big thing. You know, the Olympics only comes around once every 4 years, and maybe never again for some people. That moment can define you. And winning is one thing, and as you said, falling over is another. And you know, what's it like for you in those moments before the gun goes off?
I mean, you're right. That there's a silence. It's like they go to your marks, and you go and you shuffle your foot a few times to get it in the right position, move it that extra millimeter. Everyone's a little bit wobbly because you're in that poised position to go. So we have no set in the 8. It's just on your marks, bang,
Right.
And you don't know when the bang's coming. So you just like, and that silence goes on, feels like an eternity. But what you're trying to do then is, all you're trying to do is, the race is a process for you, and because the 8 can change. You've got your race plan, but you're pretty much just thinking about the first 50 meters. So it's just like, and everyone's got the little sayings in their head, you know. So and it's just like bang, go. And for me, it's accelerate, get up to race speed for the first first 50s, accelerating, then go round the bend. And then when you break, and it's all about the positioning then, so that's when you're going to start jostling for positions. Because in the 800, we start in lanes, and then 100 meters in, we break. And that means we all come into the inside lane. So that's when athletes get tripped over. And that's all you're thinking about, is that first piece. But you just want the gun to go. You just want to get this done. You don't want to enjoy the race. I just want to get to the end of it. I just want to know what the result is.
Yeah. And at what point for you did you know that you'd won the race? Because it's not always when you come over the finish line. For, you know, the 400, I guess if you broke it down, the 100 meters, you know, it's a flat out sprint, and it's very hard if you've got guys right next to you, because it's a millimeters. But I guess in the 800, you can build that gap as the distances go on. So at what point did you think, I've done this?
To be honest, never. Because I think if you get to that point, that's the fine line that you tread as an athlete between confidence and arrogance. It's a bit different if you're 60 meters ahead. But my race, I mean, when you watch my race, the pack was still together with 150 meters to go. The whole pack, 8 athletes in a pack. Anyone can strike at any time. And the Algerians struck with about 150, 125 meters to go. And I was sitting at the front. I wasn't leading. I had another athlete next to me, because that was my plan, that 2 of us would sit at the front. And I managed to make that happen. So there was a long way round for anyone else. And this Algerian suddenly went boom around the outside. Luckily, I was ready. I was ready for it, and I was just about to go myself. But it's not like you go into a sudden sprint. You wind up. You start winding it up. So I wound it up, and then I just had enough that he sort of hit the front, but then I hit it even harder, and I took out a space and just. But then that home straight is longer than the silence before the gun. I mean, that home straight, if you're in the lead, goes on forever. Because you are just hoping and praying, and you can't do any more, right? You can't get any faster because you've given everything. You're just trying to hold as much speed and form. We call it hold form in running, right? Still trying to look good. Yeah. But it's not about looking good. It's about, because that's how we perform best. But you're just trying to, but you can hear the crowd. You can hear the other athlete. You can hear them like
breathing
behind you, and you hear their feet, and you just, they're coming. And you're just holding on, praying for that finish line, and then eventually you get to the line. But
what was that?
When
I was going to say, what was that moment like when you? Because I guess you're physically and maybe mentally exhausted, even though it's a short race. You know, it's in comparison to a long distance something. But you know, it's mentally and physically hugely taxing. What's that moment like once you've kind of looked up and you know you've done it?
For me, it was relief, because the pressure was on for me to do it. It's not like I knew I'd win the race, but I had the potential to win the race. And so the way I look at it is, if somebody had to beat me, they had to have a better race than me. And all I can do then is, if someone runs the perfect race, breaks the world record, all I can do is shake their hand and go, "Wow, you had a great race today, mate."
Yeah.
So for me, it was just, I had the world record when I went into it, but like in the 8, you don't know what's going to happen in an 8. So it's just relief. It was a relief that I'd actually done it. And it's almost the relief followed by the exhaustion very quickly. But the strange thing for me was, my friends and family were just there, right? So I went over to them. Once I sort of hugged a few of the athletes, went over to them. But you can't get to them because there's the barrier, and there's almost like a moat that goes around the outside. It's not really, but there's you can't get to them. So they threw me a flag, and I got ushered off to go and do the lap of honour. And I was great when I was with my friends, But then there's 35,000 other people in the stadium. You're doing the lap of honour. And apart from the odd bits where you might see someone you know, but anyone who's come to watch me, so all the team officials, all the everyone, all my teammates, the 8 you watch the start and the finish, they're all going to go to the start and finish pens because that's where they're going to see most of the action. So there's no one around the back of the. So you go, and there's people you don't know, and it's almost like a lonely place because you're just waving at them, and you prepare for every aspect of your race, but you can't prepare for how you're going to feel if you win or lose. And I found that really strange. And then when it's all, you've done your lap of honour, and eventually if you take too long, you get ushered off the track because the next race has got to go.
Yeah, get off.
And then, but then I didn't get to go to my family. It was straight into the process then of the medal ceremony. And that's not quick. You have to go through a whole process to get to that. I think we did in Athens. So we get all our accreditation back. They check you off that you're the right person that's going to the medal ceremony. Then you get taken off. And then I think we went through doping control as well. So we had to go through drug testing. So you have to go and do all your samples and all the paperwork that goes with that. And then there's the 3 of you in the room just waiting to be called out. And by this stage, you've got your tracksuits back on, and you're trying to do your hair back, and you're just getting ready to go out for the medal ceremony.
I can only imagine what that must be like when you as you say, even the prep, but when you're going up and actually getting your gold medal.
It's so surreal, and it's like, it's one of them things. Every athlete deals with it differently, and I think for me, I like being with people I know. I'm quite extroverted person. What I do for a living, I stand on stages, I speak in front of cameras, but I'm also quite introverted. I like to be with people I know. So I just wanted to get back to the people I know, because I still hadn't I still had my mum and dad were over there. I hadn't got to them. My brother was there, best mates were there, and I hadn't even got to them yet. So I enjoyed the medal ceremony, but you just want that bit, because that's actually the bit. Like when then you finish the medal ceremony, then you've got to try to make your way back to where your friends and family are. But of course, everyone's seen you win a medal. So anyone that's in the stadium now is coming to you for autographs, photographs, and all you want to do is get to your friends and family. And then eventually I made it back. It took about an hour and a half later. I finally got back to my friends and family. And that was the moment. That was the moment you just go, wow. When you hug your mum for the first time, or my coach come up, gave me a big hug, and he went, "You've done it." That's the bit.
How emotional were you at that point? Because you said you've had the sudden hit of winning the race, but then you've kind of had that huge gap where you're just kind of waiting and this medal ceremony. So to actually get, sounds corny, but get into the arms of your mum or your coach, what was that like? Was it a different feeling that came back to you?
Yeah, that's the emotional side of it, I think, because that's, when with your mum and your dad, that's, you think, well, they've been through with me. I mean, I was bad enough when I was a kid. I was a handful growing up. So, and then to have me losing my arm that they got a phone call at 4:00 in the morning when I lost my arm. And they was in England, I was in Australia. 36 hours later, they was in Australia, from being asleep in bed to getting off an airplane in Australia. And so they at that time that the surgeons can't tell my mum and dad exactly how bad I was. They just say, your son's been involved in a very serious accident. You think you need to come to Australia. So they've gone through all that, and then all the the rehab and the ups and downs I've gone through. So to get to that stage, for them, I think, was massive, because they just know you've done it.
Yeah. And
then you've got the bit with the coach. The coach has gone through so much with you. And AO, anyone in athletics knows AO Falola. He was larger than life, and he almost used to run the races with you. He went through the emotions of a race, and he was there. He was there with me, and it's just like those kind of things. That's what made it. That's what made it the perfect night.
Yeah. The
race was amazing. Getting the medal I dreamt of, but the medal's a piece of metal, right?
Yeah.
The medal isn't the memories. The memories are getting to your friends afterwards, and
the priceless
stuff. We had
a
pretty cool party that night. Yeah.
I bet. Well, I think because I love athletics and I love sport and rugby, football, etc. I could talk about that side of it for hours. But just going on. I mean, the new chapter of your life, obviously, once you retired, was going into speaking and performance and keynote speeches, presentations. I mean, there's kind of so many strings to your bow. And one of the points is, I know your let's call him your teammate now, is Andy Cohen-Ray, who we were very lucky to have to speak at one of our Whole Man Academy events. And I'll say this about him: I owe him a huge debt of gratitude, because we originally had Nick Compton, who's the ex-England cricketer, who was supposed to be speaking that day, as well as Andy. But excuse me, Nick hurt his neck the night before, and I just arrived in London and got a message saying Nick's not coming, so you've got a big slot to fill. And when I spoke to Andy, he was like, whatever, I'll speak for 24 hours if you want, I've got enough. And boy, he was amazing. So I just wondered, well, firstly, what we'd love to do is get you and Andy on together at some point to talk more about the business that you do, because that's a whole different podcast in itself. But for you, your new career of going into the keynote speeches, presentations, what was that like for you?
I mean, I started out, many people, I've been keynote speaking for 20 years. And I started out like, when I first made it onto the global athletic scene and was making the papers and things like that, just local schools, and you just start getting asked to do that. And I started getting asked to go further and further afield. And I was still training at the time. Being an athlete was my job. Keynote speaking went on the side of it. But I saw it as a way of just relieving some of the pressure of being an athlete. So it takes your mind off it. And but then I remember I was going to Manchester one day, and I was just thinking, why am I doing? I'm not. They're not even paying my petrol, right?
Right.
And I'm doing this for free, and I'm getting asked to do more and more and more and more and more. So I'm obviously doing something right. And I thought, I wonder if I can earn a living out of this. And I met a speaking agency through a couple of other Paralympians. And I remember getting my first ever paid speaking job was to a local women's institute. I think I got 50 quid to go along and speak at one of their lunches. Great sandwiches. That was the start of it. And then, but alongside that, I was getting more corporate stuff, and I was doing more and more and more. Who would have known it? The guy that all his school reports said if Danny could stop speaking, he'd actually get somewhere in life, would actually eventually end up doing a job that involves him speaking. And it just grew and grew and grew. And it's speaking's organic, right? So someone will see you at an event and they think, I have to have this guy for my event. And then they'll take you to their event, and then someone else takes you to their event, and it just grows and it grows and it grows. And I love it. I absolutely love keynote speaking. And I've built a presentation. It's all around, overcoming hurdles in life and how we adapt and how we can be resilient, and then how we learn and how we can be successful. And, I've built my own sort of models on how to be successful, with a lot of humor, stories of being shark display divers and all the daft stuff I've done in my life. But it just, I really enjoy it. And it's, for me, it's about empowering people to realize that they can achieve their dreams. And it doesn't matter how big their dreams are sometimes. It's not even realistic, but we can achieve things. And it's how we do it. It's using the mindset of sport to create other stuff. Because in sport, it's those little steps we take.
Well, you just hit on something which I know, is part of your, let's call it toolkit, is being a master storyteller. And I know for a lot of people, sometimes when you're trying to get a point across, our creative director, Scott McCarthy, who does a lot of public and keynote speaking and corporate as well, always has instilled in me the importance of, getting a message across through a story, which helps people maybe filter it and understand it. And it's about captivating your audience. And at what point did you realize you were a good storyteller, or the importance of telling stories?
I think, as you can tell from the podcast, I can tell a good yarn, and I've always got a story for something. I'm one of those, but it's the storytelling is, for me, for some people, speaking is just, it's just speaking, right? They just go and do it. And I'm not your stereotypical sports speaker. It's not about I did this one, that did this one, that did this one, that.
Yeah.
There's the highs, the lows. There's everything in there. It's about taking people on the journey of life is like, really. And then putting the learnings behind it and the reasons that I did stuff behind it. But the stories bring it to life. So that's how me and Andy work. So a lot of stuff we do is we're using the science that sits behind how we create high performance teams, but we're using the stories to bring it to life, to make people realize how you can implement this stuff and how it can be successful. And that's what I do, and that's, you know, some of it is storytelling that I do on stage. Some of it is more based around how we can actually, if we use certain mindsets, we can achieve what we're really aiming for.
Well, I was just thinking about that. I mean, there's so much. Again, we could do a whole podcast just about mindset, which I think, you know, people listening would be able to take great value out of. I know one of your presentations is built around, was it the 5 key elements of success, or elements to success? Sorry, not. But would you be able to just, even if kind of just break that down a little bit for us, so people could understand a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I looked at what it was that made me. This was after I retired, so I looked at what it was that made me successful in my career sometimes, and then not so others, right? So why are some athletes successful and others not? So even though you're doing the same stuff, right? Athletes do exactly the same training sessions. To get to the Paralympic final, we've all got the potential to win. We're all good enough. And then you look at businesses. So I've worked with businesses all over the world, implementing high performance and helping them understand what it looks like. And so why is it one business is more successful than others when they're doing perceivably the same thing? So it got me thinking. I broke it down to what I call the 5 key elements. So I start off with a goal, and everyone understands goals. I do a whole session on this, but, you know, very briefly, the goals. But for me, a goal is words. So we can all say stuff, right? You can say, you know, I want to make my business a multi-billion-pound business and sell it within 5 years. I want to be CEO of the company I work in, you know. I want to play off scratch in golf. I want to drive a Ferrari, you know. It just, they're words. For me, it's the second part of the 5 key elements is the reason, the why. That's the most important thing. So for me, being number 1 in the world, which was my goal, wanted to keep it simple, was not about just being able to say I'm number 1 in the world. It was about the accolade. It was about when I looked at the other athletes that held that ranking, and the guy that had it before me was a Kona Omar from the Ivory Coast, and he had the world record when he was 18 years old. A formidable athlete, and bear in mind he was from the Ivory Coast, so he didn't have the facilities and the support network of, you know, professional support network that I had. He was training a lot dirt tracks and things like that, and I'm just thinking, wow, and that is a proper athlete.
Yeah.
And so whenever you lined up on the track, it's almost like the other athletes feared and respected him in equal measure. And I wanted to be that athlete, you know, that was feared and respected. So I knew what, but I most importantly understood why. And then I talk about how you have to plan the journey. You can't just say I'll get there somehow. We plan that journey. And in sport, it's built around the Paralympic cycle, the 4-year cycle. And then it's how we broke it down every year into sort of kind of what I had to achieve on each year. And then I look at the team, building the team around you, not just the professional team, you know, also your support network, because they're really important. Because for me, you know, and that's what my keynote is all about. It's not, and that's what I'm very honest about. You know, my life may sound rosy, but it's had its lows, it's had its highs. Yeah. And sport brings a lot of lows as well. So it's not been a plain sailing. I've had ups and downs like everybody, and I'm open about them. So we build this network around. So you have your professional team, which we have a lot of people now in sport, but then you've got your family and your friends, because, you know, life is not always kind. And when life's not kind, sometimes we need that arm around our shoulder, or the kick up the arse that we all need every now and again. And only someone close can give that to you, right? Only someone close can give you that kick up the arse and say, wait, get your head out of the sand, come on. And then I look at the magic really is the incremental gain. So it's how we put these little stepping stones in place to get to where we want to get to. And I look at my journey for that. And I talk about how I had to be forced. When I sat down with AO and we talked about that 4-year journey to get me to Athens, we worked out I needed to be about 4 seconds faster. And 4 seconds to anybody is not long, but to a track athlete, it's an eternity, because it's about 30 meters to me on the track.
Yeah.
And the mindset is, imagine the mindset, like, say you've just run the fastest ever race, you're in a puddle on the floor, and your coach comes up and goes, hey, Dan, that's brilliant, mate, but any chance you could find an extra 30 meters?
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. You're like, hey, I've just run the fastest I've ever run in my life. Where do I find 30 meters? I'm knackered.
Yeah.
So we broke it down, and it was 1 second a year. And as I alluded to, 1 second is a big chunk of time. Then we broke it down again.
I guess that helps your mindset, doesn't it? Instead of saying we need to find the whole amount, you know, let's just find this, and then this, and then this.
Well, we got it down to 1/4 of a second every 3 months.
Brilliant.
So that's all we had to focus on, was quarter of a second every 12 weeks. And that's the difference. And that's the mindset that sports people have is every single day I went to training, and that was like 12 to 14 sessions a week. I tried to do it better than I did it the time before. Now, you're not going to be successful every day, but that is the mindset. You'll never see an athlete that goes into a training session and goes, I smashed that session last week. I want to do it exactly the same or worse today. It's always about, I want to be better. Or go into a race, I broke the world record last week. Guess what? I'm going to run exactly the same time today. It's not, it's about, I want to be better. You're not going to achieve it every day, but the mindset is, how can I be 1% better? How can I be 100th of a second faster? And it's not always about working harder. It's about working smarter. And that's how we do it. It's just constantly chipping away with those little goals we aim along the way.
Well, I think you've made the analogies to do with sport as well, but you've made a good point there about the importance of, as you say, having a coach or having a mentor or someone in your corner that firstly is going to give you encouragement and guidance, but also kick you up the arse when maybe you're, naturally we're all going to have days where motivation isn't at the highest level. And I wonder if since you've moved into the business, is that part of you where you're helping companies? Do you think a lot of them, that's what they need is someone, an external person like yourself to give them a kick up the arse, but help with the planning?
Sometimes, yeah. It's the reminder of it's the everyday. It's the everyday that's going to get you the success in the long run. So it's the being better every day. We come in. So sport. We can win. I have to lose a lot of races to win a race, but I'm not losing races. I'm learning all the time, and it's that mindset. So it's about in business. If you've had a great success in business, then it's about, you don't sit on that. It's about, how can we be even better? Because what'll happen is other people will catch you up and go past you, because they'll just learn from what you're doing. But also, if you've had a bad time in business, you don't just forget about it and say, look, let's just park that never happened. Or if you have a bad day, something goes wrong for you personally in the world of business, you don't just say, let's forget about today. That never happened. Tomorrow's another day. Yeah. Yes, you do move on, but you can learn from it. There's stuff you can learn. And that's what we take into business. And we take that mindset of sport, which is being 1% better every day, but also the process of sport as well, because, we put everything in place to be able to perform on the big stage. Every single element has to be perfect for us to be able to deliver. We leave no stone unturned in the build up to a race. So for races, my coach would have put me into races before Athens, and he would have said, right, Dan, you're at the back today. Don't want you anywhere else but the back of that race. And then with 150 meters to go, I want to see if you can get as far up that pack as you can.
Brilliant.
Next race, you go, next race, go from the start, go from the gun, mate. I want to see you eyeballs out, and I want to see you blow up at 600 meters, and I want to see you try and hang on. So you learn what it's like.
How hard was that for you?
In the middle.
What's that like though? Because you've got your own ability, and to kind of say it, obviously a bit like life. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter about the result of that moment of that race. Yeah. It's about just kind of mixing up and testing yourself. And what would that be like, in a race when you are told just stay at the front, and when you blow up at 600 doesn't matter?
It's difficult because my mindset to race is different to that. But that's where you said about it's important to have a coach. And that's the thing about, like, the coach that I had, AO, it's the trust. It's that trust. And it's that belief that you both have in each other. Because I remember in 2002, at the World Championships, I came fourth in the 400 and fourth in the 800, which isn't that bad, right? Fourth in the world in 2 races. But my funding was based on me winning medals. I lost all my funding. It's brutal sport, It's not based on what you did 2 years ago, it's based on what you can do next year. So I lost all my funding. So there goes all my support network. And there goes some of the belief in me as well. Can I do this? How am I going to get back? And I remember my mum and dad sitting me down and going, look, we love AO. He is an amazing guy. But sometimes in sport, you've got to make a decision. They just said, do you need to make some changes then? Do you need to train with a different group, new coach? They wasn't saying that I had to leave AO. They were just asking me the questions because I'd underperformed. And I was just like, no, AO's the man. This is a transition period. We're changing events. And this one didn't work out, but we'll get it right. Because I just knew that there was something about him that could get me to where I wanted to get to. And it wasn't just about the training sessions, because, you know, athletes all around the world do the same kind of training.
Yeah.
It's something special about the coach that brings something out of you.
Well, I think that's, you know, going back to either the athletics side, but going back to the business side, again, I know that, you know, business coaching has maybe been around for years, but it wasn't labeled as anything. Whereas now, you know, business coaches, and I think personal coaches as well, can really make a huge difference to people, because often it's kind of calling out the bullshit when people will be making excuses to why they haven't taken those, as you said, incremental steps, and just saying, you know, no one's saying it's easy. And especially for yourself as an athlete, or back then, it was the hard hours, it's the long hours. And building anything successfully in life, what we're understanding and trying to help the guys for the Whole Man Academy understand is it does take sweat, tears, blood, effort, swear words, family time maybe taken away. And I wonder with you, with the business, I guess it's about, what's the word, like building exceptional results. And for you, when you're working with the business, what is the first thing you do? Is it trying to break down all those 5 elements for them?
Well, I mean, we work slightly differently. When I work with Andy 1404 Performance, that still sits behind it, but we have our own performance model we work to as well. And our performance model is all based around building a team, because you've got to get the team right. You've got to get everyone communicating together. You've got to get everyone buying into the same dream, the same goal. You've got to create that. So we look at all that. We look at a lot of language, and it's how we communicate with each other, how we talk to each other, how we bring the right attitudes to work. Because I had to turn up to training with the right attitude. I had to have the right mental approach. You know, my internal language as an athlete, my internal dialect has to be positive. It's no good if I'm turning up to training going, oh, I'm really tired today, I can't be bothered to do this training session. Because if I have that going on inside my head, that's going to come out of my mouth. It's going to come out of my body language. My coach is going to know that straight away. And guess what? I'm going to get what I'm thinking. You know, if I'm thinking negatively, I'm going to get negative results.
It's going to come out in your result.
Yeah, so we work with that with the teams. Then we start off with that part of how they communicate with each other and themselves, and then we start looking at the culture and environment they create. And of course, that is, you know, so, and that's really important. We look at the differences between it, but you've got to have the right culture within a business. You know, it's got to be a thriving business. It's got to be a place people want to come to work, to thrive, to succeed. You know, and that the culture's kind of inbred with a business. It's organic, it grows with it. So we look at that and how it, you know, and that specifically for that business. Then we look at the environment they're in. You know, that's the thing you can change a little bit sometimes to create a better environment for them. And then we start looking at the performance. Then we really get into performance. Once we've got those bits right, we can start looking at the performance. And that's where we look at not just physical, like how we deliver, but the mental side of it as well. Because as a sports person, it's no good being physically fit if you're not mentally fit as well. So we look at the mental and the physical performance of the people within the team. And, you know, and with Andy's stories, where everyone, you know, people that have heard it know it's a really hard story to listen to, but it happened. It was real, you know, just like I carried an arm out of a car, and Andy went through the traumas he went through in his life. Yeah. Like many people have. But he's come out the other side, so it's the lessons that he's learned. But so that we look at the mental side of the business. But it's not just about mental health. It's about performance as well. People have to be mentally fit to be able to perform. So, but in amongst that is, of course, mental health. Because if people are going through trauma and we're not helping and supporting them, then they're going to underperform in business. You know, and you're going to end up with someone who's very ill or off work, stress-related illness. That's not good for the business, but most importantly, it's not good for them. And then we start looking at the results side of it. So we go through a whole process with the team. And we do that in many ways. We'll do that either in like high impact conference events, or we'll do that over a long period of time where we work with the business. And of course, we, like many people, have had to change now. Yeah. Me and Andy work. Our business model is one thing, and it is we work together. We're always together. You never see us apart. Both our respective partners are convinced me and Andy are having an affair. We're always on the phone. We're always chatting. You can tell us, you know, we're very open here. Yeah. Well, I tell you why I love that. I mean, I think Andy's great. You know, I'm lucky enough to have met you a couple of times, and we wouldn't invite you on the podcast if we didn't think you had huge value to give. And talking of giving value and adapting, you started doing the Friday virtual lunch.
which, I think is a great idea. And it's similar to us with the Zoom calls that we're doing on Thursday nights, just as an excuse to get guys together. So I just wonder if you could tell us a bit about the virtual lunch and how it's been kind of going.
Well, like many people, as soon as we were shut down, realised that we wasn't going to be able to deliver the same way we could. So we are now we've got our virtual programs almost ready to go now. We've been creating virtual online programs. We've got one for education, which we're just about to launch as well. That's some news for you. So we're looking at the world of education. But we're also got our business side, which is nearly ready to go as well. So we're creating the programs we normally deliver and turning them into a virtual offering. But that's one aspect of it. And that was going to take time. But one thing, as I mentioned, how we work, it's about how we communicate with each other. It's about connectivity. And the thing that being shut down has taken away is that human contact that we have. Yeah. So when we don't just go to work just to work. People go to work to be part of an environment and a culture. So part of that culture is the people there you're going to get on with, people you don't, but people you do. So, those chats around the coffee machine or when you walk out to get some lunch and just catching up, and that's taken away from people. So we just wanted to put that back. So we put in the virtual lunch club, and it's not networking, it's not selling. It's just a chance for people to build up rapport with each other, build relationships, and have conversations, and normal conversations that we would have every day. So we talk work-related stuff. We talk, how people are coping, what people are doing. But then there's general conversation in there as well. The stuff that we would normally have at work that we're not having now because we're sitting isolated in our dining rooms, in our kitchens, wherever we can find a space big enough to sit with a laptop, and do some work. And that's what the virtual lunch club was born out of.
I think it's a great idea. And I know that, for most people, their life has obviously changed because of lockdown. For the majority of people are working from home, and maybe a lot of those people didn't have a dedicated workspace. I was lucky I had an office, but even so, that was actually very close to where the hallway is, where our little kids are. So I can't be doing these podcast interviews where we're trying to maintain a level of professionalism, and then having squeaky bums shouting at the door and banging on the door wanting to show you their Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. And that's where, for a lot of people, I think it's a bit of it's support and escapism, being able to jump on these calls and see some different faces, but not, as you said, it's not about networking. We've had one steak tutorial where a guy taught us how to cook the perfect steak. Last week we had one all about changing a state. Tonight we've got one by the chap who wrote The Art of Sleeping. He's talking all about super sleep. And it's about just trying to do something different and create value for people who might not be seeing also another face all day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the important part of it. It is about putting some normality back into life. It's about, so I one of my family members, I got him on the radio today. So he's 78, he's a widower. He's my dad's cousin. He's going through chemotherapy at the minute. He's doing his back garden marathon, right? Right. So he has been running a mile every day whilst going through chemotherapy, and he's a real Essex character, proper character. He used to work at Ford's, and so he does this mile in his garden every day. But around that, he does podcasts every day for his family to keep them up to date. He's making films. There's films of him running. They've done some to like the theme of Benny Hill and all speeded up. They've done black and white ones to like 50s style. But for him, like, he's a widower. He goes down the pub most days, not because he's a big drinker, but for social. He go and have some food down there, catch up with some friends, just has a pint, a couple of hours of his life, and then he comes home. He's had all that taken away from him. So he's doing all this stuff now to keep himself connected. He's 78 years old. He's just learned how to use Facebook. He did his first radio interview today. And that's what it's about. So some people have had, all connectivity taken away from them. So putting stuff back, like the sessions you're running, like the lunch clubs we're doing, it just gives people that break. And it does become quite intense, as many people are finding out, being in this one space, kids running around. My partner's downstairs in our dining room because we haven't got an office, but then I've got to record some content this after lunch today for our program. So I've got to kick her out of the dining room because that's the place to do that. And it's just, everyone's going through this. So it's just that chance to sort of step away from that and
just trying to adapt, isn't it, at the moment? Talking of, I appreciate your time, so we'll wrap up fairly quickly. But just, on the one of the main things for the Whole Man Academy was, generally that guys didn't and don't get together to talk, which, obviously we're doing on podcasts and we're providing platforms like you are. Who have you talked to over the years when things have been challenging, and why don't you think guys get together much to talk?
I mean, that's a tough question. I think guys I think generally we are less inclined to open up because you have the fear of being judged. So it's very rare a guy's going to phone another guy and say, "Look, I'm really struggling today. My head's not in a good place." Or you've got to be pretty close with someone to do that. Me and Andy have, because of Andy's journey, and now I know, me and Andy have real honesty with each other. Like if we're not feeling it, we'll tell each other. But I never really did that when I was younger, and you don't phone people up. But you had to learn the honesty in athletics because you had to tell your coach when you weren't feeling it because you turned up to training. And actually, to be honest, after and I put it in my book when I wrote my book, that it was through that process that I realised that I was more than my athletics coach. Because when we was coaching athlete, that's what we was, right? And sometimes I resented him a lot. But I think we both mellowed as we got older. He had children, I had children, so we had a lot in common. So I used to talk to him a lot. Like as I was going through quite a tough time in my life, marriage gone and stuff like that. And so I used to phone him up and chat to him pretty much. So without even realising it, thinking about it, probably him. He was the guy because he'd become, and we were sort of building a friendship then. And then, so it would have been him. But I think it's guys, we don't talk and we don't open up and we don't have those conversations. But I think also because we're more jovial. I'm not saying we're more fun than women, but we tend to treat life more jovially, don't we? If something bad happens, we'll make a poorly judged joke about it generally, and then just move on. And that's kind of our way of dealing with it.
So it's a good answer. And we'd love to get yourself and Andy on together, which I think is that's why we haven't touched too much on your business side, because I think you and Andy together I've met Andy and yourself, and it'll be a powerful combination at some point if we can do that. Just to finish up, I mean, there's been lots and lots of different bits that people can take away from the podcast, which I think is primarily the reason why we're doing it. Apart from the fact that I just love chatting to interesting people. But just a couple of quick fire questions for you. One is, what was Celebrity MasterChef like?
Intense, really intense, like more intense than it even looks on the telly. That's why people make mistakes, but great fun. And in case anyone knows, I'm from Essex, so of course I've got an apron. Naturally.
Is it the one of a naked woman, or is it something a bit more sporty?
Oh no, I've got the MasterChef one.
The proper one.
The first question I asked when I went in there, I said, "Do we get to keep the aprons?" And they said, "Hell no, this is the BBC, right?"
Of course it is.
So, and in my mind, as the person was telling me we can't keep the aprons, there was that voice in my head going, "Oh yes, we can."
I'm keeping it. That's I guess that's the main reason you went on it. Did it improve you as a chef?
Oh, massively, because it made me think about food. I love food. I love the flavors of food, and it made me think about how we interact with food and how we cook. And you have to, I had an athlete's mindset for that. I worked really hard for those shows. I mean, before, they're filmed days apart, but even the build up to it, I was cooking every day, practicing the dishes that I was going to prepare. Like I did rack of lamb for my first dish. I did so many racks of lamb before that. I used to go to butchers regularly. Just rack of lamb, rack of lamb.
I'll take the lot, yeah.
And it was a fantastic experience. It really was. And I was gutted. I went out at the quarterfinal stage and went out because I did a dish that wasn't good enough, and still beat myself up now about it because I'm competitive. And I think, if I hadn't done that dish, if I'd done something different, maybe I would have got through.
Isn't that nice though? Again, going back to, I spoke very late last night on a podcast about the importance of continually testing yourself, learning and putting yourself out of your comfort zone and in a situation where you're going to test yourself, and that life, can be interesting and give you new experiences and new learnings. My next question was actually, I think you've just answered it previously, which was who are your heroes growing up? I mean, I know you said about, if you talk about the athletics side, you had your Steve Cram and Seb Coe. Anybody else who we wouldn't have heard of, who was one of your heroes growing up?
Well, actually, I never had. I mean, I spoke about cramming of extra grow up watching them, and I wanted to emulate what they could do because I was an athlete at the time. But I never wanted to be them. I've
Right.
never wanted to be anybody. I've only ever wanted to be the best version of myself I can be. Because that's the point of trying to be someone else. But the people that inspired me, and they still do, are the people that do things just because. So if I think about being an athlete, I got to live the life of a professional athlete. We used to go to America for 8 weeks and train in California. We spent 6 weeks in Australia training in Melbourne. We trained with Kathy Freeman.
Yeah.
Out in Melbourne, I just trained in America with all the top American athletes and athletes from over, just, going down the track in California in the blazing sunshine and spending a couple of hours training. Heaven. I got to do that. But there's people that trained just as hard as me, if not harder sometimes, that are never going to make even county level athlete or something like that, but they do it just because. There's people in the world of football, right, that train really hard, and they won't even make the school team. They can't get in the school team, but they train harder than all the kids that are in the school team. But they train harder because they love it. And one aspect of my training was the gym, the weights. And because I couldn't do the kind of weight, I couldn't do the big power weights anymore. Like I couldn't do the Olympic lifts and that. I was stuck on the machines doing cleans and jerks, or trying to replicate cleans and jerks and that. And it's just boring for me. I hated being in the gym. I loved being outside. So for 40 minutes twice a week, all I did was moan, whinge, complain because I was in the gym. But then you look around the gym and there's people in there that are doing it just because they want to get a six pack for the summer, just because the doctor said if they don't shed a few pounds, they're in trouble, just because they want to live a healthier life. And they're putting in the same effort, if not more. Those are the people that inspire me, people who do it for the love of it.
Oh, great answer. We should all meditate on that one. And I always say on podcasts, when you get a good moment, is rewind it back, 30 seconds and listen to it again and actually think about it and how you could maybe apply some of that thought process to your life. Last question would be, what advice to a man would you give so he could do life better?
For me, I like advice to a man. Well, I think it's live that life where it's how can I be better every day? What can I do better than I did yesterday? And it doesn't mean we're always striving for success. It's just like look at the things we did yesterday and how can I improve on it? And I think it's the open and honesty. Be honest about how you feel at the time. Be honest to yourself and then be honest to the people around you, because if we're not feeling great, we're gonna portray certain behaviours, and if we haven't told people how we feel that day, those behaviours are just going to come across as, oh, he's an arse,
Yeah.
So that's how me and Andy work. If Andy will tell me sometimes, he said, look, Dan, I'm not feeling it today, and or vice versa, Andy, I'm just, especially in this current, Andy, I'm struggling today. Me and Andy have put off doing things we're supposed to do, like some of our recordings we're doing for our program. We put off some days just because one of us is not in the right frame of mind to do it. But if I did it, like for example, if I was in the right frame of mind and I just did it half-heartedly, Andy's going to be on. He can't even give me a kick because he's 50 miles away. He's going to be sitting there thinking, "Why am I wasting my time? This idiot's not even interested."
Yeah. No.
But if I hadn't told him why, and it's just so it's live your life like trying to improve, trying to look at how we can be better than we was yesterday in certain areas of our lives, and just be very conscious. Listen to what's going on in your head and be honest with yourself.
Lovely answer. Question: If people listening think that you could be but they should know that you could be really useful for their business, and maybe looking to book you as a speaker or just get hold of you and ask you some questions, what's the best way? I know you've got websites. What for you is the best way they could get hold of you?
Email me is the easiest way. It's info@dannycrates.co.uk. For any of the speaking work, and of course we've got the 1404 one as well, which is 1404performance.com. So info@1404performance.com. Pretty Perfect. Simple. There's just one thing there. The 1404. Many people ask us why 1404. It's because there's two reasons. I always wanted a performance business when I was doing keynote speaking. I'd love to have a performance business. I had the concept in my head. It would be Beyond Limits. I know there is a lot of companies called Beyond, but I had Beyond Limits in my head. I thought, what an amazing business name. And I told my brother, I had this name. I wanted this name. My brother set up an abseiling business. My brother does rope access. He set up a business called Beyond Limits UK before I ever set up a business. And so he's nicked my business name. So me and Andy was thinking of a business name. We couldn't think of anything. And he just, 1404 is my race number. So he said 1404 performance. And we thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's good because at least it means something. And it
means something. And people talk. People ask the question, why 1404? That's what a business name should be about. It evokes something in people. So I bring the 1404. Andy brings the performance.
I like it. I'm guessing you bring a bit of performance to it as well. I know from reading. Yeah. Well, look, again, I always think what I love about these podcasts is, firstly, my opportunity to sit and chat to interesting people who have got great life stories and great lessons for people to learn. And sometimes the hardest thing is what to leave out, because there's so much more we could go into. We'd love to get you on at some point, a joint podcast, which we've not done before, with Andy and yourself, to talk all about business and performance, which I think would be fantastic. But in the meantime, just to firstly say thank you for spending the time this morning to talk to us. I know you're busy, but also to acknowledge.
It's always good to talk to you.
Oh, it's great, but to acknowledge you for the work you're doing, because forgetting the fact that you've been a great athlete and provided a huge experience when you won the gold for, let's say, the nation, but also working on the business side of the performance now. We all think it's about doing good in the world and helping people do things better, or men do life better.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about for us. It's about helping people perform at a higher level. And that doesn't necessarily mean they want to be international athletes. It could be anything in your life. I mean, that's, I like yourself. I do personal coaching and I do business coaching with people. And that's all that is about. It's just helping elevate people to another level. Mm-hmm. Just assisting them to get there, and that's what we do in businesses. We go into businesses, we don't know the business, we know people, so we know how to get the best out of people, and I use all that knowledge. I've been part of high performing teams. I've been part of some of the the highest performing teams in the world, British Athletics, British Paralympic Association. I've worked with the best athletes in the world. Like I mentioned earlier, athletes work together. We learn from each other. Athletes don't hide stuff from each other. That's why you see squads. Yeah, Mo Farah does it. He trains with all these rivals. Yeah. We went out. My training partner was Donna Fraser. She came fourth in the Sydney Olympics in the 400 meters in the big Kathy Freeman race, if anyone remembers that. Donna was fourth in that race. Yeah. Guess what? Who we trained with? We trained with Kathy Freeman. Not because you're trying to nickel their training, but you just feel if you all train together, then you move further afield and you leave the others behind. Yeah, and that's the lesson we try to take: is learn from other people, learn from other people in your business, learn from other businesses, see what they're doing, talk to people, find out, because that's how we did it in athletics. Coaches all speak to each other.
That is a really important lesson, I think, to end on. As you say, is learning from each other, and also not being too worried to allow people in to learn from you as well, because maybe you'll pick something up from them. Are you doing your this is going to go out on Friday, but are you going to continue doing your Friday lunches at the moment until lockdown ends or something?
Yeah, we've committed to it. So every Friday we do our lunch. Depends on what's going on in the world and what other people are doing. It depends how many we get on it. But the great thing, we've got a core of people now that are on every single one. So they're building up a relationship. They've never met each other, but they're starting to build that relationship. So there's me and Andy don't have to host them anymore. We're just part of it. We sit back and we press play and we let it go, which is great, because in the initial ones we was kind of interacting with people and asking people what they do and where they're from. Now they come on and they know each other and they start chatting about their week and the daft things they've done and what's happened, and we use it for that. It's an escape for us. Me and Andy will be frantically recording content tomorrow, but in amongst that we'll have a break and we'll do some connection stuff with people.
A bit of escapism from all the serious stuff. Lovely. Well, Danny, I'll just again say thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you soon on a podcast with your business partner, Andy.
100%. You'll see us again, and you'll see me on some of your webinars as well. You'll see my face pop up. I was at the launch of the Whole Man Academy, so 100% behind it. Really believe in what you guys are doing. Get how important it is as well. Just because getting men to speak is not about forcing them to speak, because they often won't open up. Then it's about putting us together creating connection, creating relationships, which is exactly what you're doing. You know, you're bringing men together, and then naturally you start to open up. And I think that is so important.
It's good to hear. I mean, it's nice to hear lots of support on it, and definitely it's something we want to get onto kind of talking about even more. And what are you going to do now?
So the rest of my day is a quick bit of lunch, see what the kids are up to, see what they have or haven't done in their homework, and then we're recording more content. As I say, like it's like yourself, everything's virtual now, so me and Andy will be recording more content that's going into the online business and education programs that we're going to have up and running.
Lovely stuff.
But it's about changing. It's adaptability, right? So we always wanted to do virtual offerings, never planned to do it yet. That was next year or year after, but the world changed, and you've either got to change with it. We can't choose what's happened, but we can choose how we deal with it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like doing your Joe Wicks every day, isn't it? You can choose to not do anything, or you can choose to just do something to get yourself started every day and just keep that routine in your life.
Yeah. Now, I think hopefully all the guys that listen to it will take some personal golden nuggets from it. And we look forward to having you back on at some point. Thank you very much, Danny.
Great to speak to you. See you soon, guys.